Right, we got feminism to look at as well. Now, break it down simply, it is structural to some degree for feminism. We are shaped by the institutions in society, the fact that gender is socially constructed by, a patriarchal society will be their view. Official statistics, remember, are not going to be accurate. Of course they're not, because they're going to downplay the extent to which women are the victims of crime, or the treatment of women is going to be unfair compared to the treatment of men. Now, feminism is a tricky one to write about for crime, because unlike stratification, it's the focus of feminist writers is not specific in kind of one zone. So what we'll see today is we'll see again that there's lots of feminist writers who are going to focus on a slightly different area of crime. They're going to say a slightly different thing, and fundamentally, although the ideology will be the same behind it, it might be difficult to link some of these ideas together. So some of them appear a little bit more standalone than some of the others. The first thing that I would be saying about the feminist perspective, perhaps in an introduction to it, is Heidensohn's classic view that research in sociology, criminology, etc. is going to be malestream. And by that, obviously, we mean that it's done predominantly by men who want to associate and look at groups that they can relate to. So they will focus on male groups. Okay? Now, that means that women and the impact of crime on women and whatever women might be doing in relation to crime is not as thoroughly investigated as Heidensohn would like. Therefore, the charge that you would bring against it is that it's malestream, and that would be for almost every approach that we look at in the social theory, and that's a nice evaluation point there. There's a general one that you could throw in. Now, we see, remember, when it comes to feminism, Carlen, very important feminist writer, and she's going to look at, I would always say, it's like the deals. Now, these deals, they sound almost like bonds. It sounds very similar to Hershey's social bond theory here, when we're seeing Carlen's deals, and she's going to look at some young women. Well, actually, they're not necessarily all that young. She's going to investigate some women. I think there's 39 or 36 of them, but it's less than 40 women that she looks at. And they're all committed multiple crimes, and they're all going to have said that the reason, or she will say the reason that they're committing crimes is because they've had a class deal and a gender deal which have been broken. The gender deal being that they'd be able to have a loving family and a nice relationship, and the class deal is that society's promoted the idea that they will be able to get nice jobs that pay money, and that they can live a nice standard of living. And that this doesn't happen for these women, so consequently, just like when you get a social bond broken, your crime is more likely to increase. And she felt that there was no reason as to as why these women then wouldn't commit a crime. Well, all of these deals are gone, therefore criminality is the reason. Or criminality is the logical conclusion to the problems that they face. So you've got Carlen, and you can make a nice link to Hershey here. If you were writing that paragraph. Now, obviously, 40 women, it's not a big sample, and there's lots of weaknesses that you could have methodologically with her theory. Before we move on to look at Adler and liberation. Now, liberation is going to say something slightly different. All of our feminists will say we live in a patriarchal society where men have set Carlen's women up to fail because they promised these deals, and it's largely going to be men who are in charge of the workplace, and largely men who've done the women wrong in relationships, whether it was their father or their boyfriends, whatever. So the patriarchy is responsible for these broken deals, and Adler's going to say something slightly different. She's going to look at the increase in female crime in a wide range of sectors, albeit normal, like violence, and you can see some violence in girl gangs, perhaps. Anne Campbell, Martin Denscombe, could be a link there to the impact of violence that we're seeing, but also white collar crime as well, that we're seeing an increase of. Now, she's going to say that these might happen because women have been more liberated from that patriarchy. So that explains why we're seeing more female crime, because they're not scared to do them anymore, because they're not living in quite the dominant patriarchy that they previously were. And obviously we've got some evidence and you can put some support in place for this. Big problem though with Frieda Adler's idea is that who's going to be committing the most crime according to the official statistics? Well, it will be working class women, and consequently they're the least liberated because they're the least free with their choices. It's middle class women who've largely been the liberated women in society because of their movement into the job market. So surely, if Adler was correct, it would be liberated women who are committing the most crime. Instead, we still see it being the usual marginalised, downtrodden. So, we can see the essence of the problem with the patriarchy runs through both, but they're saying quite different things. And then you've got double deviance, okay? Now, double deviance is the fact that women get treated harsher by the court system. So harsher treatment by criminal justice system. And we can see evidence through Stewart's idea that judges are playing off stereotypes of traditional, from the patriarchy, again, from traditional values of what they believe women should be acting like, the traditional behaviours of women. And we can further see this by Carlen's study in Scotland, which shows that the courts have harsher sentences for mothers whose children are in care. And therefore that shows double deviance, because what Carlen would say is that women are guilty of two things according to the courts. One, the initial crime that they've committed and been arrested for and charged with, but also the crime of being a bad mother. And thus, linking in with Stewart, they don't live up to the stereotype that we would traditionally expect of women, because obviously these stereotypes, according to the feminists, would be a construct of gender in order to keep women down by an oppressive patriarchy. Now, there's lots and lots of issues with this, and double deviance can certainly be compared with chivalry thesis by Pollock. The idea that actually women aren't better treated at all. The idea that women are better treated than men, in view of the fact that men are chivalrous and the police and the judges are chivalrous, and they're less likely to send women down. And I suppose it can be supported by typifications by Cicero. I mean, you only have to look as well at the criminal justice system to see 95% of the prison population are male. That's a slight underrepresentation, I think, of women in the criminal justice system. So what we're saying there about women, are they not committing crime, or is there a chance that there's some kind of leniency? Now, obviously your focus is going to be, in a feminism essay, on making sure you get your feminists in early, and start to paint a picture of their views. When you look at double deviance, you could look at the unpleasant dark side of rape cases and the difficulty of convictions, and the fact that Walklake will say that women are more on trial than the person who's been accused of raping them in a trial, because they have to paint a picture of being whiter than white, otherwise they won't get a conviction. So you can look at this court system as well here as with a very good debate, and you can have a nice debate as you evaluate this perspective. So there's lots that you could go at there. Remember, when it comes to feminism and crime, you've got, and you can go back to the biological reasons for criminality, and that actually the reason is nothing to do with deals or nothing to do with liberation. It's simply due to the fact that, according to Wilson and Herrnstein, that men are born more aggressive. They have the personality traits that are male, that are biological, and their hormones will mean that they're more likely to commit an aggressive act. So you can look at the biology, and you can throw in Lombroso there with that quote that he says, where a good woman is repellent to crime. Do you always like that one? And that will give you a kind of biological explanation, which you can just very easily criticise as well. So within the feminism essay, there's lots that you could say. You can also look at men in a feminism essay and say a big problem. You've got the beauty of being able to say in every essay that's not feminism, Heidensohn's idea that their theory is malestream. You could also say that feminists don't look at potentially the negative side of being a man in 21st century. using Mackingale's crisis of masculinity to show that perhaps masculinity is, yes, on a spectrum, and that it forces people into criminal behaviour. Take a look at the back of your gender booklet and you'll see Messerschmitt's talking about that as well. Okay, so his theory will show how you're going to end up with the criminality of certain masculine types because they're trying to live up to that type of hegemonic masculinity. Okay.